What up, everybody? Welcome to the IAG Thursday Thing. This thing that we do every Thursday, if at all humanly possible. And we've been pretty good about it. Man, I don't think we've missed a show in a minute. But this week's no exception. We're getting together. We got a pretty good topic this week, and we got a pretty badass guest. And we're gonna have some fun. As usual, I want to throw some thank yous out there. We're joined this week by producer Jordan, who is in here with us, and he makes all the stuff in the background make sense, make sure our levels are correct, gets this thing recorded correctly. He does a lot in the background. We appreciate him. And we also, Randy, 100% did not understand the concept of today's episode and basically begged me the entire time to just find something else. And I forced him to make the thumbnail anyway, and I think it turned out great. And I don't know what he was worried about, but I truly think this episode's going to be it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a good time. This week we are joined by my tuner and the tuner of a vast majority of my customers, Mr. Graham Gaylord of Boosted Performance Tuning. What's up, Graham? How you doing?
Oh, good, man. How about you?
Not too bad. Happy to have you here, dude.
Be back.
Yeah, we haven't had you on since all three of the tuners decided to go thrash each other, so that was fun.
Right.
That was such a great episode. That is now our most listened to episode, by the way.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It has surpassed everything, which is awesome because I didn't think anything was going to unseat DCCD, but it happened. Yeah. We got lots of stuff coming up. I heard you're going to be making a triumphant return to coming to PRI with us. That'll be fun.
Yes, yeah. I've missed, I think, the last couple, but we're going to be out there this year. We got some people to talk to, some things to look at, so looking forward to it.
Yep, we've got hopefully some things come through with certain rules. I went and poked them again yesterday, and then maybe we have to stop by some transmission people.
Yeah, that'd be good to.
With that. We'll see where that goes. You know, we're not gonna.
Hopefully, we can figure it out before January 1st, because it'd be nice to have it as a write-off for 24.
That's kind of like my theory too. Is let's try to like hammer that home. I'm trying like hell, and I'm trying to jump in their ass about it. So I'm trying.
I know. Cool.
I am trying. We can't talk about it too much, but I'm trying.
I know. We'll go harass some people and shake some trees and stuff.
Yep, we'll kick a tree and harass a cat, or I don't know, whatever people are doing.
Put Abe in a headlock, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no big deal. Either way, yeah. Big things coming up here real quick just to chat about. Black Friday is right around the corner. I cannot confirm nor deny that we are having a large sale, but I can say historically we have large sales during that time period. And if you were looking to get rowdy, I would highly recommend you maybe hit me up before then. We figure out what you're after, and I might be able to drop some hints as to about what that would look like on the day. But if I cannot confirm nor deny that it will actually be kicking off on actual Black Friday. So hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge for those who are listening. Yeah. That's about it. Oh yeah, the VB coilovers dropped today too, which was pretty cool. So if you've got a 22 plus WRX, we have coilovers for you now, off the shelf. So nice set of Fortune Auto street oriented coilovers, ready to rock. But yeah, this week, this is a topic I've been trying to get to for a little while, but I've had some really cool guests come on, and we've moved some stuff around, and like, man, I wanted to do this like 6 weeks ago, but and then maybe another podcast that also has some really informative stuff kind of beat me to this, but I think they approached it slightly different, and it's going to be a little bit of a different take from our end as to their take, I think. But either way, it'll still be good. It's actually cool seeing Greg from Cosmic in here. I might bring some of these guys on if they want to add their 2 cents on this too, because it would be cool to get a couple of other opinions on the way this went down. But I kind of randomly picked a year because to me, that year seemed like it was, I don't want to say things were on the downswing, but it was kind of, everything was fairly stagnant. Would that be a good term to use in 2018 as to like what you could do with an EJ, what you could do with an FA, and then a
Yeah.
couple years later, everything got kind of crazy.
I've been
Um,
thinking about that today. I think that's a decent year to pick because the FA20 WX has been out for a few years at that point. You know, the EJ is obviously very well established. You
yep,
know, there's a lot of cool technologies that existed. Cobb Flex Fuel was up and running for everything, and
yeah.
you know, so yeah, I think that's a good point to focus in on. And then for me personally, that was basically my 2018 was my my third year tuning full time. So by this point, I'm
You were
was
full.
really personally ingrained in tuning, so I can remember it well.
So the question is, then versus now, was it better tuning or modifying your vehicle? I shouldn't say tuning. Was it better modifying your vehicle in 2018 versus today? And there's quite a few things that go into this. Tuning is just one part of it. But I that was the thing that really shook a lot of stuff up, is how the Subaru community approaches tuning. That's why I want to have Graham on specifically today. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to chat about and kind of get your take on. So long story short, it was right after the pandemic. What was it, 22, when
Yeah,
green screen hit?
April of 2022.
Okay, April 2022, an email went out, um that I mean, some people look at like it was like Pearl Harbor of of the Subaru tuning community, essentially stating that you could no longer turn off check engine lights with a cob access port. All those naughty things that you had been doing for years, TGV deletes, all sorts of stuff, no longer could do it. At the same time, like flex fuel kits, um, the ones that had been sold up to that point no longer would work. If you were to get a new tune, so your current tune would, all your stuff that you had and how you were running it would still function. But that's kind of the point where everybody like kind of lost their mind. And now that we're a few years past that, we can look back on this and kind of reflect. And especially a lot has changed in a very short period of time. Um, so I mean, let's be real. Everybody was naughty before 2022. Can we just agree on that, Graham?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it
Yeah,
wasn't even like, obviously like some shops and some tuners were really pushing it because they wanted to make money selling you these parts that they can
sure.
no longer sell you. But a lot of people, a lot of let's just say from a tuner perspective, it wasn't even up to me. I wasn't, necessarily going around recommending, oh yeah, for your street car you drive to work every day, take these things off your car because it's worth the extra 15 horsepower. Guys were already doing it. That was the mod path, you
Yes,
know.
it literally
Um,
was like your path,
yep,
um, was like one of the, before you even swapped out your stock turbo, you were throwing your TGVs out.
yep. You were getting rid of things like that. You were, putting
The only
on.
time people ran catted downpipes was if they weren't running an external wastegate, and everybody had an external wastegate.
A lot of people did. I wouldn't say everybody. I don't feel like they were super super popular, but it was certainly a thing. But
It was very much a thing.
yeah, but
It
no, a
was
lot of
very
guys were going for, Nvidia, you go on eBay and get an Nvidia downpipe for like $400, I think, if I
yeah,
remember correctly. Like,
380 or
so
something, yeah.
not only were they doing it because it was, extra power, extra sound, but it was also inexpensive. People were,
Yes.
some things like specifically catalytic converters were being left out because it's cheaper not to have to replace it with a high quality one.
Yep.
People were spending money to do, let's say TGV deletes for, negligible extra power on a stock turbo, or,
Yep.
if they're doing like a big setup, sure, it starts to make a difference when you're moving 40 pounds of boost through an engine. But,
Sure.
people were throwing that at it for a while. Like the FA20 guys were just doing things just to do them almost, or
Well,
like
they didn't have
air,
much of a path at all
or like
for
another example that always drove me crazy, a brand new STI doing an air pump delete. Like, why? It
Mhm.
didn't gain you any power. Yes, if your air pump failed and stopped working and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars at the dealer, okay, I can understand, wanting to go another route. But people were just taking it off their car like it was going to add horsepower on a brand new STI, without needing the
it
space
was like
for
the first
a
thing they
rotated
would
turbo
do.
or
I used to
anything
have
else.
guys come in all the time, that back at the old shop where that's what they wanted was emissions delete stuff and a tune for that. Like, why? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
It was like, yeah, this is what we do. Oh, my car's bad. My car's an off-road machine now, but I drive it on the street. I mean, there was that mentality of just
It really
doing it
was.
to do it. I swear people just did it to do it.
Yeah. Like, it was kind of a scene thing. It was really, really strange.
Yeah,
And
it
it
was
wasn't
showing up
just
on cars that
Subarus,
didn't
it
need it
was
or,
the entire literally the entire automotive community was like this. 2018 was wild. If you look back on it, it's real easy to see why it's real easy to see that from the lens of where we sit now that shit was out of hand, okay? Um so back in the day, people would come in the upgrade path for say like a new STI would be for a lot of people, a ton of people, especially if they're in a cold area, would either be a catted down pipe and that would help with boost creep issues, or if they went catless, we'd have to do an external wastegate. Um we would delete the TGVs, um, and then you would do a lot of your air pump delete was almost always a thing in there. And then you do a lot of the basic stuff around that, bigger injectors. A lot of times we do rails, which you could still do, and a larger fuel pump. That kind of quickly became like stage 2 plus, I guess was a good way of putting it. And that's what a huge amount of people were doing. Um, so the question is that at that point was really simple, okay? And a ton of people were doing it. Nowadays, you got to think about it a little more. You got to run a catted down pipe, okay? Which I to this it really isn't that big of a deal. Hell, I was one of those guys who was like, all pro, you don't need a cat, yada yada yada, and that was bad. Like, I will admit I was wrong. Um, you lose almost for modern high flow cats, you lose nearly nothing as far as flow, and you don't have the boost creep issues. You don't have to deal with purchasing an external wastegate. Basically, you can do the same bolt-ons that you did other than TGV deletes, which again were next to no extra power, and you you're running about the exact same horsepower, yet you pass emissions in all 50 states ish.
Yeah.
Let's say 49 because California's a little weird if you don't run like a proper tune.
Well, and if
Um,
they do like, like a actual physical inspection, they look for carb stickers and things like
yeah,
that. So yeah, it was
carb is a little
little different.
different, and so whatever we talk about today, I'm just going to preface: always check your local emissions laws and what you can and can't do, and have a conversation with your tuner and your shops that know that area really well. But um a lot happened. So when this first happened, it was chaos. Okay. In 22, and that whole first year, it was absolute chaos. You had two things happening. One, nobody could get their car tuned or knew how to get it tuned. You had a bunch of people that were mid build that had to completely change what was going on. You had people who had literally just finished their builds and like their tunes were no longer going to be legal. Like, there was all sorts of just insanity going on. Okay. Um, the market really had a hard time, adjusting. We all knew it would, but it was going to have a hard time adjusting. A lot of us just didn't see past this at all. A lot of people sold their cars. A lot of people got out of the game. It was surprising. But then, you got companies like us, a bunch of other companies did the same thing. we changed a bunch of our products. Instead of our V2 TGV setup, changed to our V3, which incorporates having the flappers in there still. And they actually flow better. It's there's been stuff like that. The market will always adapt. If they need to, they can. You know, Cobb has now fixed flex fuel, so it's legal again. So you can do flex fuel and stuff like that. You guys had to, from a tuning standpoint, you guys had to, do a little dance to kind of figure out what's legal and what's not and how this is going to work. But you guys kind of got formulas and recipes down to make things work. Your basic bolt-on guy. So here's the question: after everything kind of got sorted out, my argument is going to be it's actually easier to modify your car today than it was then. What I am going to say though is that's slightly due to the fact that there are less options. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something you and I have talked about a lot, offline. But yeah, it for from a tuner perspective or a shop perspective, the the mod paths have become more restricted, which also makes them more straightforward. You
Yep.
know, for like a VBWX, you start with an intake, an access port, and a tune, and you have a great time with that. And then you can add, a Jesse J pipe. That's actually getting a little bit more challenging now because people are having to redesign them to have two catalytic converters because the law states that if you take off two cats, you got to put two back on. So anyway, but then you do your supporting mods, you do your intercoolers, your charge pipes, and that's about it. From a tuner perspective or a customer's perspective, you don't have to figure out, okay, well, do I delete the EGR? Do I delete the TGVs? Those are just extra combinations of things that have to be accounted for. So to support people with a VBWX, from my perspective, is a lot simpler because I've got less base maps to start from. I don't have to have variants for different things deleted, so my starting places are all
42
more
different
straightforward.
intakes and 32 different downpipes and you
Yeah,
know
so yeah, exactly. So that there's more consistency,
yep.
that makes the email tuning or even dyno tuning process goes quicker for people. They're not having to go back and forth as many times because they bought this cheap part, and versus that
Yeah.
part. And, like I said, it's just so yeah, to your point, I agree. Like it's a little bit easier now. Um, on some of these mod paths,
think
is it harder
especially
to
for
make
somebody
bigger
who's
power?
starting out,
What's that?
especially for somebody who's just starting in this, okay? They
Yep.
they bought it their 22 WRX is their first Subaru, okay? Honestly, like it's real easy to mod those cars. The path is very simple, okay?
Yep.
Um where I think you run into friction is guys who have been doing this. I say guys, I don't whoever. If somebody's been doing this for a while, let's say they got into it in like 2015, maybe got out of it and then came back, they're looking at this like, holy crap, I don't even know where to start because they already had a preconceived notion of how things were supposed to be. And a lot of
Yeah.
their research means nothing now, especially when they were being told for years you have to delete your TGVs and air pump when really that wasn't the case. I think a lot of people are figuring that out now.
That's true.
Um, so yeah, so for like a 22 WRX basic street car, I think it's easy as hell. I mean, honestly, I think it actually got easier for VA WRX guys and even later model STIs. I think it got easier. Um, where it really starts to get a little harder is when you start getting into the GD STI and especially the 16-bit ECU GD WRXs.
Yep.
Um, that gets real dicey. So the other the problem you run into with them is they're old enough to where there's not a massive amount of people buying new parts for them anymore. So when you go to try to find new parts for them and post 2022, uh, we all used to buy cheap catless downpipes for those things, and you can't really run a catless downpipe with it anymore. Cob tune stuff exists, but aftermarket exhausts can be a little harder. And a lot of these cars, when you purchase them, the TGVs have already been deleted. You know, if you've got an '07 STI, the air pump's probably already deleted. You know, there's a lot of that stuff, all of those modifications that happened, and now you're trying to modify the car from there. That can be a real pain in the ass. Some of it's you're going to have to search around and get these things back. You know, finding old functioning TGVs is not easy. So
Yeah.
fair warning, if you're buying an older STI and you're getting into this and it is heavily modified, this could be rough. Um and then if you get into a bug eye, I got to be real, I don't even know what to tell most bug eye people. Um my answer to most bug eye people is I tell them it's time to build a race car. And that's where our next discussion is going to go here. So, one of the things that kind of sucked in 2018 was doing a standalone. It wasn't easy. Plug and play stuff, I got to be real, Cobb had such a lock on the market because of the capabilities of what you could do with a stock ECU to a certain degree. It was really hard to explain to a customer why a standalone made sense. Nowadays, it's significantly easier if you have a race car. So if you have a race car, and that's what it's getting used for, is track use stuff, it is so much easier to say, hey man, get a Link. Hey man, get an Emtron. Like, all of your problems go away. And it's real easy to say that to somebody with a bug eye who maybe only spent $3,000-4,000 on the car, but they understand what they're trying. They're doing a proper build. You know what I mean? There's somebody who's really, really going into a really serious build. If you're getting really serious about these cars, to be honest, in 2018, you probably should have been on a standalone anyway. We were all just stupid. Here's a good question, and just this is a theory. Let's think of all the hate that Subarus were getting in 2018, right?
Yep.
And we were getting slammed. Let's be real, from all angles. Because engines, we were really finding the capability of making really big horsepower of these cars. And when I say that, I'm talking like 700-800 horsepower plus. I mean, upwards, well over 1,000. You know, guys were doing some really wild shit with these. And there was a good portion of those who were still doing that with stock ECUs. How much grief do you think we would have saved ourselves if we would have been more apt to go to standalones for a bunch of those shenanigans?
Oh, probably a good amount. I mean, yeah, having engine safeties, having fuel control, knowing what your fuel pressure's doing, your oil pressure's doing, like, yeah, that would have been great to have. And the few cars that did go for that back then, they benefited from it. A lot of those cars, never had issues, or they caught them before they became a bigger issue. I have a lot of guys from that era that are still running around on standalones doing great.
So this was kind of the thing that I thought about. I'm like, how many cars would have been saved back in the day when everybody was losing their damn minds, with a standalone? And I think it would have been a ton. Let's just talk in hypothetical here, okay? Everybody was already being naughty, all right? You would already so people really understand. A lot of people think like the EPA changed the laws. The EPA at no point has changed anything. They just started enforcing stuff harder, but they didn't change any laws. We had all been naughty up until that point, okay? So if you were to continue to be, let's just say, I don't think it's a stretch to say, if you had already done all these things, just sticking a standalone in your big power street car would have been much worse than what you had already done. You were running basically the same risk. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's true.
So if you were to have done that, imagine how many of those big power street cars wouldn't have just naded. And I mean, dude, they were all over the place. These guys would make Instagram, basically, the Instagram community basically came up on, well, that dude makes like 800 horsepower, but the dude broke like 20 minutes after he left the dyno, doing it on a stock ECU because he had no idea some random parameter was going in the toilet. you know, the backing plate of his oil pump was coming off and he didn't know it, or he had a fuel pump that wasn't coming alive when it was supposed to, or a million different things. You know what I mean? Stuff
Oh
that
yeah.
a standalone he could have maybe saved the engine. Oh my god, dude! I bet you millions upon millions of dollars. I can tell you that. I'll even go as far as to say we would have sold less engines. I think IAG would have sold less engines during that time period.
Maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
so so I guess from a race car standpoint, um, I think you're also in a better place now because now something you didn't have in 2018 are a plethora of very easy, extraordinarily powerful standalone engine management um, options. There was nothing for CAN bus cars during that time period. You attempted to make a Heltec work for you, and at the time with Heltec, it really wasn't there for you. They've done updates and stuff like that, and you know we're not talking about today, but like that was about the only reasonably affordable option without you going to a Motec that even existed at that point. And a Motec wasn't, if anything, a Motec has gotten significantly simpler since then. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, to some degree. I'm actually looking right now. I'm opening up my Motec software to um, try to get an idea of when they had things kind of
Kind of
sorted.
figured out. Because I mean,
Yeah,
it really just didn't exist, man. Like, think about it. There was we didn't get plug and play links
yeah.
for
So that
the
was
bus
it was
cars until
20
really recently.
it was 2019. So when I gave up on the Hull-Tech and sold it to you, I put a
Mhm.
Motec in the car basically the next year.
Yeah,
So, and because that was the only thing that could do CAN bus, that could plug right in and just ran the car perfectly. Obviously it was, twice as expensive as Haltech, but it worked great. So, but yeah, that was the only option really at the time. Was to do that.
yeah. I mean, that's all you had. Now, if you had an '07 or older, that wasn't running CAN bus, it wasn't that bad. There were options. Haltech had some good stuff. Link still had some good stuff. Things existed. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Man,
absolutely.
it like if you had an '08 or newer, which is what people were modding at that point, um, there wasn't good options. So that's another thing that forced you into doing shenanigans with your stock ECU, and that's why the community went that way. Because I mean, what did a Motec cost to put in your car at that point? Because you did it right around then. How much did that really?
So
What
with the
if you were just some dude off the street? What would
yeah,
that bring you?
it was like $6,200 maybe.
That's a lot of money to
It's
invest
about the
in.
same, yeah. And that's
You buy
no,
that,
that's
then
that's
you
literally that's the ECU, the faster logging, and an AFR sensor, and that's it.
yeah.
That's no extra inputs. That's no extra special wiring. Nothing. That's just to get the thing on Motec, you know, to start with.
Yeah. No, brutal. That's a and then you got to find somebody who can tune it. You know, if you're some dude off, you're a different example because obviously it was yours. But if you're just some guy off the street, you get this thing. Then you got to find somebody to tune it too. You know, so
Yeah,
there's another expense in that.
it
So
was
it
a
was
big commitment to do.
Serpent Wolf brought up a great one too. So now we're also talking about race cars. I'm just gonna throw that in there now. Um, when I built my car in 2019, using your Haltech, we got the universal engine harness set up, right?
Yep.
Fuse box and all the wires, and kind of had to build our harness out. It just made more sense than merging a harness, which we could have done, but it kind of made more sense. Nowadays, though, if we were to have done that again, but started right now, I'm going to tell you right now, PDM would have been in there. And PDMs were not a thing in 2018. It didn't exist.
Well,
We did.
again, hang on. They did. They did. You could get one from Motec. It was very expensive, but they didn't exist at an entry level price like they do
Yeah.
now. Let's
I
say
don't,
that nobody else had gotten in on the game to bring the prices down to
yeah. Enthusiast
ACD
level
levels
stuff.
or track day levels.
yeah, enthusiast track day level, I don't know, even maybe prosumer in a way. I don't how whatever you would call that, high-end enthusiast.
Yep.
Dude, PDMs, oh my god, I love my PDM. And the shit that we went through with wiring, imagine how much easier that would have been with a PDM. We could have figured out with a PDM. Do you remember the nightmare that was our very first time we went out to Colorado? With a PDM, we could have figured that out almost immediately.
Well, when the fuel straw was sucking shut.
Yeah, because they would have uh that pump would have went nuts.
Yeah, I
We
think
would have been able to see
we probably would have seen some evidence in there for that. Yeah.
it. That God. Ugh. Um yeah, that was a rough event. I almost lost friends over that event. That was a bad one. I'm not gonna lie. It was interesting going out to Colorado the first time, but holy shit! Especially after when we did figure it out, how stupid it was.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever been that mad at a product in my life. Um. So, yeah, the race car side of this, I think, has got significantly easier. You have so many good options now. I mean, realistically, like Link is phenomenal, and what you can do at the price is ridiculous. Emtron, uh, you know, making the jump over to the US and really amping up their support for stuff. You can
Yep.
get Motec level um abilities on something that's, somewhere in between a Link and a Motec as far as pricing. And Haltech's gotten a ton better. And it's dude, just getting
Yep.
these wired in, like CAN bus supports happen. Getting it wired in has been it's so
Well,
much
yeah,
easier.
and we're making, we're doing plug and play packages. So speaking of Emtron, did you see the new Shadow 8 ECU that came out?
Oh yeah, I wanted to chat with you about that. That's cool. So
So
that actually came
yeah,
out.
we'll have a little sidebar
Yeah,
about that. So
let's
that's
definitely talk
out.
about
That's
that.
out, and Sam and I have already been working out some plug and play packages to
Well, let's
make that
talk
an
about
option.
what that is here real quick. So Entron released a new ECU at SEMA, okay, or at least they really showed it off at SEMA. So essentially, what it was is an Emtron that's more like on the price level of a Link or a Haltech. Is that kind of the concept I'm getting out of it? That's the vibe.
That's exactly it. So like the base price for the ECU is like $1,600.
Wow, so it's probably even cheaper than a Link, but then you're going to
No,
need a
no,
harness. So
yeah,
yeah, so I bet it's all going to be right in that same couple $100 range after it gets in your car.
it's very close. It's very competitive. Now, yeah, the Link does plug in, so that saves you an engine harness. So that
Yes.
saves you like $700. So that makes it difficult, but it's getting so much closer for a lot of really powerful capabilities that Emtron has.
So when you go to this Shadow, this is what I wanted to chat with you about. When it goes to this new ECU, what are you giving up over a big Emtron?
Well, okay, so basically this is going to effectively, at least from my offering, it's going to replace the SL ECUs. So the SL ECUs have been kind of that they had the 4, the 6 and the 8 to drive 4, 6 or 8 cylinders. This is
Yeah.
basically like the new version of an SL8, but they made it less expensive to produce by essentially taking the network capabilities off the board. And I have to look and see exactly how they got there, but they basically were able to get it down to a much better price point, and it's got USB communications now, which it makes that a lot easier. Is part of the trick. Um, but essentially, yeah, this ends up being many $100s cheaper. I have to look and see. I think it's $500 cheaper, give or take. But anyway, yeah, so they've got this new base ECM that is perfect. Now, what you're giving up compared to a KV is significantly more inputs and outputs. And
Sure.
really the outputs isn't the big thing. There usually aren't that many things to control on the output side of things, but it's the inputs. When you want to have a full motorsports competition package, you want all of your pressures, all of your temperatures, your turbo speed, your exhaust pressure, crankcase pressure, coolant pressure, inlet temperature, inlet pressure to calculate your turbo efficiency, you run out of inputs especially when you're dealing with a Subaru with a dual ABCS engine, you run out of inputs pretty easily. So basically you wouldn't be able to fit as many things on there.
In that situation, I think you'd probably be looking at the KV anyway. But like,
Yes. Now, one thing that Sam and I are going to explore too is using a CAN bus based expander.
yeah,
So we're going to try to come up with an effective, affordable solution where you could put some of these extra things into another module that could communicate them over to the ECU. And it can communicate pretty fast. Some of your critical sensors need to go directly to the ECU, but some of your secondary sensors
yeah,
that don't
stuff
need to
that
be read that quickly.
like yeah, exactly. Like it could be read at 5
Yep.
hertz. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't
Yeah.
really be
Your
that big of
your
a deal.
crankcase pressure and your coolant pressure, those aren't used
Yep.
for critical
I
fuel
gotta be honest,
calculations.
even like oil temp doesn't need to be that
Correct.
fast.
Exactly. Some of your temps and pressures, again, that are just used for monitoring and safeties, they don't need to be that fat. They don't need to be directly to the ECU again because they're not part of fuel calculations. So
Yep.
we're looking at some options there. But the biggest difference is that the KV gives you a ton of inputs. It also gives you onboard AFR. You don't have to have the separate module. And that's the thing about pretty much every other ECU out there, Link, let's just say Link, for example, you always have to add on the AFR module to get the AFR input over CAN bus. It's the same thing with the Shadow. It's the same thing with the SL ECUs. The KV has it on board, and it actually has two. So if you have a banked engine, if you have a V8 engine that's being used for like twin turbo time attack or something, the
Sure.
KV has banked onboard AFR sensors. It has tons of inputs, tons of outputs, but it borderlines on overkill for a lot of like Subaru builds. If we're just talking about like a
Yeah.
track day car that you go do HPD days, maybe a little bit of kind of dip your toes into time attack. You don't need all the crazy stuff like your car and my car have. The KV is a lot more expensive for only a small amount of extra things that you may or may not even use. So
Yep.
if we can fit people into the Shadow 8 and save them several hundreds of dollars, that's essentially what we're going to do here.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty stoked about that. I really yeah, you've been my main source. You and Sam have been my main source of being able to sell those to people because I don't even offer um engine management outside of Cobb here.
Yeah.
So I
So
wish I
the
did,
so here
but
for pricing,
it's
the
pretty nice.
outgoing SL4 ECU was 2,200 as a base price. This
Yeah.
new ECU is 1,680.
Wow.
So
That's crazy. So yeah, I can see that being a market disruptor for sure if it works right. Um yeah, we live in a wild time, dude. So there you go. That's one more example of so again, going back to the topic here, Cobb had such a stranglehold over basically the entire Subaru community that you didn't get a lot of standalone development for our cars. There was standalones being, messed with, but our cars in particular, we were kind of left. It is a completely different animal now, and it totally changes the game as far as the market and the way they're looking at it. And you're getting companies like Link, Haltech, Emtron. They're all looking at this market differently. So from that point of view, if you're trying to build a track car now, I think you're in a much better position. Like it's not even comparable compared to 2018. You're living in the glory days right now. If you think you're not, you're wrong. Um, and then this even goes into stuff outside of just engines. Well, I mean engines and tuning. Engines in general, we've gotten even better. I think what we offer, the cool things that we offer, cool things other companies offer, it has gotten better. We have abilities and our capabilities to build an engine are better now than they were in 2018. We've just gotten better. Everybody has gotten better. It's awesome. So you can buy a better engine. But let's talk about suspension here real quick. 2018, I don't know if you guys remember a lot of what was going on, but I remember it vividly, and Stance had basically ruined everything. People were slamming their cars on trash coilovers, and that's all people would buy. The majority of suspension stuff was set up. Any of the new development was all into what was going to make them money, which was going to be getting the car as low as possible. They didn't care how it performed. Nowadays, you can't really release shit like that. It doesn't fly. Suspension has gotten a little bit more expensive, but the quality of it has gotten significantly better. Fortune is a really good way of looking at that. They've, I think, done 2 generations since 2018, and they're even their base current generation coilovers will almost crap on their old performance coilovers, their old track coilovers. Like a set of 500s now are phenomenal. And what they've been able to do, a lot of that is because they have to perform now. It can't just be, these go really low. A lot of the cheaper shit coilover brands have either fallen off or fallen out of uh preference. People want more out of their product. I think the market has said we want more quality shit, which is really cool to see. I'm really stoked to see that Stance basically is dead. Like I think we can all just put a stick in it and it's done. Rest in peace wherever you are. The other cool thing, this was another thing I thought about. This was toilet thoughts. Is if you have a car with 5x100 wheels, you're living in the glory days now too. You can thank the BRZ and FRS for that. But if you can get pretty much any wheel you want and any size you want in a 5x100 now, when even in 2019 or 2018, you couldn't. It was real pick and choose, this bolt pattern kind of screws me, yada yada. It's not like that anymore. You've got a million different options. There's even some options that are in 5x100 I wish were in 5x114. Like Motegi makes a really badass 17x10 that they only make in a 5x100. They don't make it in a 5x114. I would love to run that thing on Boogie. Can't, because they don't make it. I might get them for the BRZ though. So I don't know. I think the one that got nailed the most here is if you have an older STI that's already been modified, I'm gonna go ahead and say you're probably in a worse position now than you were in 2018. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, to some degree,
To make a street car,
yeah,
to make a street car, your basic modification street car.
yeah,
Problem is they don't make that
some
car
degree.
anymore, and you're gonna spend crazy money to find one that's bone stock and clean. But if you get one that's mildly modified back in the day was basically all the emission shit gone.
Yep.
So it's gonna be rough. You're either going to have to be willing to do it dirty and not be legal. I'm not saying I recommend this. And get yourself onto a standalone, which will solve a bunch of your problems. Or you're going to have to go dumpster diving and or junkyard hopping to try to find yourself some TGVs and air pumps and stuff and pray to God it works. Or you're going to spend out the ass at a dealership. The 16-bit cars are going to be really rough. Yeah, I think that if you're in a GD chassis car, there's hurdles. I still think they're the best STI. I'll continue to say that. But there are going to be hurdles. That's a brutal one. But yeah, other than that, I think if you have an '08 or newer STI, I think it's easier now. I really do. I really do. Yeah, so that's kind of where I think we nailed that topic. That was really what I wanted to chat about. That was my big topic for today. Um, I've been asked that a few times, or something along those lines that would go into that. Like, hey man, It's usually a GD STI too, which is the worst. Yeah, like today, I just talked to a guy. He bought an '05 STI in Wisconsin, and it's missing everything. And he's like, I want to do all these things. I'm like, we got to start at the basics. I'm not even sure how we can get you tuned right now. You know what I mean? Like, we got to have a conversation. And then he's like, yeah, I want to do this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, dude, are you still on side feed injectors? And he's like, well, what does that even mean? And I'm like, oh my God. So, it's rough. The GD guys who are trying to, a lot of these are older dudes. Okay. That's one thing that I really like about dealing with the guys who are getting GDs. Most of them are you and I's age, and they seen they watch WRC and Petter Solberg and all that, and they're in a position where they can build that car now. You know what I mean? And those are fun because these guys aren't quite as worried about money as they're worried about the experience. They want to make sure the experience is correct. But some of the stuff these guys ask for is crazy. Do you remember the old like WRC analog sounds that they made, like the chirping sound?
Oh yes.
Yeah, dude, twice this week I had somebody like, "Hey man, like if we put this thing together, can we make it make sounds like that?" I'm like, "I got to be real, dude. Not really." Like we could do burble tunes. Like I can get you wishy blow off valves. Like we can do all sorts of fun like that. But like I can't make the chirps. Like the chirps ain't gonna work. Okay. Oh man. But I love those customers because they're of the age to where they can kind of build the dream. You know what I mean? The thing that they wanted to build back in the day and couldn't afford, they're in a position to do it now. And to me, those like resto mod builds, those are a ton of fun. Have you been seeing an uptick and stuff like that? Have you been doing more of those?
Of what now?
So like a resto mod style build. So like
Mm.
like a GD chassis, but like it being done really right. Like it not so much like giant power, but more like a really clean setup. It's somebody
Yeah,
who's like coming back to a GD, or maybe they had
yeah.
one back in the day and had to sell it. Or that's the car they always wanted and never had a chance to build. Are you seeing
I
more of that lately?
I've seen some. Most of the ones that I run across are just well kept examples. The resto stuff tends to be GC at this point. Like the
Yep.
ones that Six Stars built. You've seen.
I just sent them a shit hot bug eye.
Did you? Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think that those will come around next, perhaps. But
I think the low 400 horsepower, well put together, like really well sorted bug eye is about to be a big thing, and it's going to be that and like earlier GD chassis, so like 0405 STI. I think
yep.
that's going to be a lot of that. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of that. Adam just said FA swap GC or GD. I'm waiting to see that. I think a FA24 in a GC would be a fucking riot. I mean, tell me that there isn't a better just easy bolt-ons engine than an FA24, and that in a GC, like just bolting that thing in. How
Yeah,
much fun would that be?
we just need an ECU to run it, and we'll be in business.
We need to get Emtron on board with this shit. Okay.
Well, I heard a little birdie told me that we might see something. I can't. I haven't. I really don't know anything else
We're
beyond
gonna need
that.
to
But
talk to that birdie at PRI, like,
I
because
know.
we get on the bleeding edge of that. Maybe we help Chris at Six Star put together that concept.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, that's gonna be hot.
I mean, we've got a GC sitting there waiting to do something, and if I could put an FA24 in it with a Emtron, I would not be against that. I
Dude, I just if it was an easier kit, oh man, that would be so much fun. Just grab a
Yeah.
crash newer one, shove that in there. Maybe even make the Ascent engine an option too, just so it's a little cheaper to get a hold of. I don't know. I just think it'd be fun. I think we're gonna open the floor up to some questions. We got a little bit of time. Yeah. So if you guys got any questions in the chat, those of you who are listening on the podcast, we record these live. We record them live inside of our IAG Discord, and you can join live and listen to us record, highly unedited. And we have a chat going on the side, and you can even raise your hand and come up on stage, ask the question if you want to. Which again, we're open to that. But um, yeah, if you guys got any questions whatsoever, this is going to be kind of a ask a tuner situation right now. I'm sure Graham's open to answer just about any question. I don't know what he's talking about now, but he probably should have just said that in the chat.
Well, okay, so Adam referenced. Okay, you even asked me the same thing. How in the heck did that E85 BRZ make 244 on the dyno at URW recently?
Yes. Look, that's a great question. So that was an NA BRZ with an FA24, and that thing made that did work. What?
Answer, no, but calm down. The answer is extremely simple here. It's a Mustang dyno,
Okay.
and it's not a dyno jet. We've had the dyno conversation. Dyno jets,
Sure.
From location to location, day to day, elevation to elevation, I find, especially with NA stuff, they're very accurate.
Yes.
Mustang dynos can be a little inaccurate. Sometimes they read very low, and in this case, I feel like it was reading pretty high. Obviously, I know exactly what those cars make on the dyno, and for whatever reason, that day it was definitely on the generous side. So, I sometimes what I will do if I have the time is I will go in there and I will work with the settings and I'll try to get back to a baseline that makes more sense. But
Sure.
we had kind of a challenging day where one of the first cars on the way to the dyno blew a coolant hose, and so we sent a couple techs to go rescue him, and we shuffled this car on that was supposed to be the noon car. So I was running out of time and I didn't have time to play dyno games. So I just left it. A number's a number. The car baselined at I think the car baselined at 230 and we tuned it up to 244, let's say. So it had a high baseline. It picked up the 15 power I expected, but it was reading a little high for the day.
Okay, so everybody calm down. You didn't just set some wild.
Yeah, I would love to say that I found some magical way. I'd love to say that I found some magical way to get 244 out of a stock car, but it wouldn't produce that power on a dyno jet. It would be closer to maybe 230. It was a very happy car. It was running extremely well. But
if you could do 240 something NA, you would have half a club TR beating your door down.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're 235. The most I've seen so far on the dyno is 235 on E85 with this magical header from Australia.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up here. Sorry, 232. So 232 is my record on a dyno jet right now for one of these cars.
I really want to try it with my crazy ass Ace header. Even though it was built
that's the design. That's the design that was on the car that made 232. It wasn't Ace, but it was designed like it, a 4-2-1 style.
Yep. Did it sound like shit? Because mine sounds like shit.
No, I think it sounded pretty good. Your catback is why your car sounds like it does.
No, I changed my catback out. I'm on the Cobb Titanium now, and it's Cobb like twin, like with a big basket or like a big canister in the middle. Like it's dude, it shouldn't be this loud. It's so loud.
It's because it's your car.
It is because it's my car.
Yeah.
that catback sounded phenomenal on our FA24 in our shop. I was like, okay, I really dig this. Oh my God, is it loud on my car? And I'm telling you, the only difference is the header. I was looking for leaks and all sorts of shit. I'm like, there's got to be something to this. That ain't a damn thing. It's just loud. Whatever. Hey, did you see Boxer Takeover was just announced for spring for Tail of the Dragon?
No.
Yeah, you want to go do some Boxer Takeover?
Maybe. Does it conflict with the grid life schedule? We don't know yet.
I don't think so. I mean, we don't know what the grid life schedule is, but I don't think so. Give me a quick second. I'll actually get you a proper date. But again, I don't think so. It looks like fairly early-ish spring. I don't think it's gonna go over the top of anything.
Could have a Subaru running that would be fun for that by then. So,
I should have the STI up and running plus
April
the
18th.
BRC. So if you needed a Subaru, I may have an extra Subaru.
Well, the fun would be bringing mine down there to run around Tail the Dragon.
That would be a really good time, and that would be a great break-in for that.
Yeah, need some break-in miles.
April 18th.
Yep, I see that.
April 20th. I think that would be reasonable. So yeah, I think that would be a good time. Yeah, it'd be sick if you could get down there for that. We We go. They usually turn decent numbers there too, with as far as people there. So it'd be a really good, from a talking shop a little bit. It'd be good for the business, going down there. You're gonna meet people. I'm gonna meet people. Being a
Yep.
part of the community, which is that's it's all about the community. It's always about the community.
Indeed.
Um. All right, what do we got? We got some other stuff here. Dyno Jet. This on par with the old school 2.5 RS. Start about the 200 wheel horsepower NARS. Not really. Not really. So did Fez get a new header? Was he the guy with the fancy?
I think, yeah, he's picking up something.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to line up some dyno time so we can test it and see. He also got Even Turi sponsored him an intake. So he's going to have an Even Turi intake on there as well. So we're going to see what his car can do. I'm interested for sure.
I'm interested in that too.
Yeah, because I did test the Even Turi intake on Kevin's car.
Yeah.
And it did seem to gain some appreciable power. Like I think I remember seeing 5 to 8, which for an NA car that already does extremely well, like that was pretty impressive. So it's worth something.
Yeah. I mean, if you getting anything out of those cars is hard because they're
Very hard.
extremely well refined from the header is really good.
Yeah, we tested some common intakes. We tested taking out the air filter of the air box. We tried a bunch of things and nothing picked up power from my initial testing, but the Even Turi really did. They designed it kind of an interesting way where it's almost like it's a dead straight shot right into the throttle body. There's no bends.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Cool. Yeah, I could see that maybe grabbing something. I always had this idea of doing like a Ram Air style setup on an FA, and then because I really think you could damn near get to positive pressure, maybe even a little bit above it, on a track like Road America where it's like really high speed, and then so like where you would really need it, where you need some horsepower to actually push that thing, you could probably literally ram air into the intake because it's a center throttle body that points towards the front.
Yeah,
So if you were to
exactly.
build like something fancy with the hood, with like a gnarly scoop that maybe you opened up at speed, I think you could make something happen with that. I don't know. Am I crazy for thinking you might be able to get to positive pressure with that?
No, I think it's entirely possible. Ram Air is a real thing. How much it can do is to be determined, and it's
I don't
also
think you're
very
gonna get some like 40, 50 horsepower gain, but even if you manage to pull like 5, like, and then it would still be legal on the dyno.
yeah.
Then it'd be 100% legal in Club TR, no matter how much it picked up.
Maybe if you could log it, if you could see how much manifold pressure it goes to, and then go on the dyno and use like a leaf blower to match that, I guess you could figure out if it's worth anything.
Yeah, it'd be well. I mean, man, you'd need a lot of air. I don't think a leaf blower would do it. Maybe a leaf blower would do it.
Like a gas powered leaf blower, like
It'd have to be
turned
something
up with
rowdy,
some
man.
nitrous sprayed into it or something,
You might never be able to get proper numbers from that.
Maybe not. I don't know.
It would just stand alone. It'd have to compensate. It's got more air. Give it more fuel, more boom. Let's go.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I don't know. I got a guy in here asking if you can help tune his Evo. I'd say do that on the.
Well, yeah. First of all, one thing I see right away is that what generation is that? Is that like
that looks
6,
like a
5 or 6?
5 or 6.
Yeah, my knowledge on those is super limited. I've dabbled around with the Evo 10s with Cobb a little bit, but outside of that, I have exactly zero knowledge or experience with the older stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's an Evo 4 and a Link. Either way.
Okay. I mean, I have experience with Link, so I mean, if it's like a Link related thing, maybe I could throw some ideas at him. So
yeah, maybe. What else do we got? Jeff, can't wait to get my 23 WRX tuned by Graham in the future. Still starting suspension and brakes. Yeah, well, there you go. Jeff's gonna get his car tuned by you in the not too distant future. We just got coilovers literally on the site today for those things. So If you are looking for some suspension, good street suspension, it's a hot setup. So, Greg at Cosmic, shoot us that's actually, I gotta be real, that's the right answer. Aaron, no offense to you, Graham, but the Cosmic guys do a lot of Evo stuff.
Yeah. Oh
Shoot,
no, listen,
shoot
no
Greg an
offense
email.
taken. No
That
offense
is
taken.
that is the correct answer. Have a conversation with those guys. I'm pretty sure they'd be able to help. See, we're just making connections here, saving the world one Evo at a time.
There's a
um, so okay, can somebody explain why an FA in the higher end looks choppy? I guess you're saying you see it on a dyno that it looks a little choppy.
Yeah, I can take a whack at that. So
Okay.
there's a few different reasons. So one of them can certainly be that the heads on an FA, especially like the FA 20, for example, they're designed to promote fuel economy. And the more you rev the engine, the more basically things get inefficient. If we're talking about stock heads, stock cams, that's one thing that can make the top end look kind of choppy is basically running into efficiency limits with the heads, with the engine, with the turbo.
Yeah.
Another thing that can make it look a little bit choppy is the fact that you start to run out of time for the injection to happen. So it's direct injection, and the faster you're spinning the engine, the less time you have to inject fuel before the spark happens. So a lot of times your window gets closer and closer and closer, and sometimes it starts to kind of impinge, or that's not the right word. It starts to get too close to the spark. That can cause combustion to not be as clean, which can make it look a little bit choppy. Also possible, it could have to do with tuning. I've seen, depending on the way it's being tuned, if it's not getting what it needs up there, sometimes that can cause choppiness. So without any context, it's hard to say exactly, but that's kind of some general thoughts on why you could see some choppiness.
Yeah.
But
Also,
even with, yeah, so he said built heads imported. Even with that, like I've done some pretty gnarly built FA 20s with some pretty big power and everything out of the way that you would think would help it make a nice smooth power band, but it never does. And even the power bands I've seen from other tuners on those cars, he's right. They're never very pretty on the top end. And it's hard to say exactly why. I think basically having to lean on direct injection only could be one of the challenges. I think another reason could be piston design. I know we've talked about that in the past. The pistons have a very specific design for direct injection where there's generally a bowl on the piston that is designed to kind of catch and disperse the fuel, and it has to be kind of pointed at the right angle for the injector. A lot of aftermarket piston designs, they they meet up to the bore, or they match the bore, they match the compression ratio, but they don't necessarily redesign the top of the piston because that's extremely expensive. So there could be some challenges there as you get higher RPMs where again that short window of fueling, it becomes more important to squirt the fuel into a bowl and disperse it, and we lose that with aftermarket pistons in a lot of cases.
check
So
out, did you see the dyno graph that they posted?
yeah, taking a look at it now.
Man, that's really wacky.
Well,
That's doing
okay, so
crazy.
first of all, one thing I see there is the RPM trace. They're
Yeah.
probably using a tack pickup and it's getting a dirty signal. I
That
almost never use a tack pickup on Subarus anymore. I do basically gear ratio. So I take it up to a certain RPM in whatever gear I'm going to make my runs in. And I tell the dyno, this is 3,000 RPMs. So I don't have to rely on like a dirty tack signal. So that the loop-de-loop I see there is a bad tack signal. But the general choppiness up there is still there. You can still kind of see it.
I'd
So
be interested to see what that looked like if they weren't using a tack signal though, because that looks exactly like that's what I was about to say. Is it might not actually be that choppy. It's you might be getting an ugly tack signal like using the tack signal thing doesn't work. This isn't
yeah,
we
that
don't
looks like some tag
like
signal stuff going on there for one.
yeah, I mean we don't have like distributor caps with giant spark plugs that come over anymore, you know what I mean? So it was real easy to pull a good signal off of those. These days, you're
Yep,
having to get it off a small wire and it just doesn't play well.
exactly.
So that actually brings up a good point though. So back to our original discussion on, is it easier to tune now than in or mod a car now than it is in 2018? From the VA, literally hardly no aftermarket existed, even in 2018, and that was years after this thing came out. You know, other than basic built engines and some basic stuff. Now we're starting to get more things, and I really think the next big step is going to be a reasonably priced company. So let's say a Link, Haltech, or now Emtron, the reasonably priced stuff. They get a way to not only install a standalone, but a standalone for a reasonable price that can control some port injectors also. If they manage to get something like that done, I'm going to tell you right now, FA tuning is going to completely change. But
Yeah.
right now, for you to make serious horsepower, you kind of got to go to a Motec, or you got to rely on some less than fantastic product to try to get it done. And it's not the most reliable way to do it. I could see that changing a lot of things. I truly think we're about to see a tipping point in that too, especially with all the excitement around making big power with an FA24. There's a lot of excitement about that, and it's fun to see. Um, so yeah, I hope I once again, this development, none of it would really exist if Cobb didn't have to kind of pump the brakes on doing shenanigans. I think it has gotten easier again for your standard. I'm just getting into this basic bolt-ons guy because it's a very straightforward path now, and race car people can do more race car shit because the middle of the road, honestly, it's because the guys who are trying to pretend race car but use a Cobb to do things they probably shouldn't have been doing were the ones that were really in all reality holding back the industry and the community from being able to do better things. So
Yep.
I think we're in a better spot. Port injection is definitely a big hurdle for the FA20 guys. Yeah, it's the hardest part. Sketch, the same guy, he says it feels fine driving, but looking at the graph, I've always wondered. I'm betting you that's what the situation is. Yeah,
I
and
think
he's
that's a lot of it. Yeah.
from Motec, but AK price tag is brutal. I know. By the time you get it in the car with injectors and everything else, you got like 12K into it before you can even start tuning. That's rough. And that starts with one of these other companies finally saying, okay, we're going to make something work. I don't know. In a perfect world, Cobb would use their CAN gateway module like the GTRs. Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling we're going to see some the CAN gateway for Cobb. I think you're going to see some very interesting implementations with that. I'm going to wonder if they try to pump the brakes on some of that or not. I think the CAN gateway could really change. There's so much cool shit you can do with a CAN gateway that a lot of people don't understand. That is a neat product. Speaking of CAN stuff, well, I got you. Did you do any research on those CAN gauges and how many things you could run in the background and if it popped to the foreground if it was like out of spec or whatever? Do you remember what I'm talking about? Like basically
Yeah,
a mini dash as far as gauges go.
that's the gauge art CAN gauges. Yeah, so like I showed you, like you can set up customizable warnings,
Sure.
and as far as things popping to the front, no. But you can basically show one thing, two things, or four things.
So you if you have 4 up, it's only
Yeah.
basically gonna be monitoring
Well,
those 4.
actually, I take that back. It looks like if you set a trigger point, like let's say you go in there and you customize, you set a maximum oil temp, and even if you're not looking at oil temp, if that oil temp gets exceeded, it lights up the warning indicator light, and it looks like it'll also take over the display and it'll show you
That's
what
exactly
your
what I'm talking about.
yeah, it looks like it does do that. So to
Dude,
be honest
that
with you, I sell a ton of these. I recommend them all the time, but I haven't actually spent a lot of time tinkering with one myself, because I have the dash in my car. But
I think we need to go have a conversation with. I wonder if they're going to be somebody who's either like rebranding one of those or them
well,
themselves. I
that's what
think
no,
we
that's
need to
what they
get a
are.
hold of
That's what
them.
they are. So it's made by
Yeah,
Gauge Art. Link
yeah.
sells a version of it. Haltech sells a version of it. Emtron sells a version of it, and they're just pre-programmed to their CAN bus. But Gauge Art is the universal one, essentially.
We need to get a hold of one of these, and I think we really need to play around with it because I think that is putting a dash in a vehicle isn't for everybody. You know what I mean? But I that CAN gauge setup would work for everybody. That would simplify so many people's lives.
Well,
So you don't
yeah,
need 50 damn gauges.
like I said, when I sell Emtron or Link, I almost always sell one of these gauges with it
Yeah,
because
those things are
because
sick.
you're giving up your access port. Let's say if you had an
Anybody
access
who's
port.
confused about what we're talking about, essentially this company called Gauge Art, they black label this same gauge to like a bunch of different companies, but what it is it's a 52 millimeter, I'm pretty sure.
Yep,
Yep,
exactly. Yep,
52
52.
millimeter. So it's a standard size gauge, with like a little OLED screen on it, and it can display basically any CAN parameter you want. So anything that your ECU can see, this can see. And you can set it up for warnings for all sorts of different things. So like if your coolant temp gets too high, it can throw a light, or if it can show you these things. But there are certain parameters that you don't need to see all the time. Most of the time you're just going to want, like, I don't know, AFR and coolant temp, whatever. Just basic stuff, or oil temp, so when the car warms up. But what you would like is if, like, say fuel pressure isn't hitting where it's supposed to, or something like that. If that parameter is out of whack, it's still watching it, and if it is out of whack, it will then warn you. So it'll take priority and take the screen over and go, "Hey, this is a problem." That is awesome. That's one of the best things that a standalone does, but it has no way of displaying it. Like, this is what this is, a display for that. That's phenomenal, and it's very reasonably priced for what it is. If you think, I mean, we were all spending $250 a gauge on Defies not that long ago, and this thing's what, 350?
Yeah,
Yeah,
359. Yeah,
yeah, $360, and nice and clean. You can set it up with your phone. What a shit. We
yeah.
need to
It's all.
play this
Yeah,
thing.
it's amazing
It's awesome.
for something simple.
Yeah. I wish it would. I wonder if the CAN gateway, once again from Cobb, since it's going to be able to mess around with CAN, I wonder if it'd be able to output a lot of those parameters to this in an easy fashion. I wonder if Cobb could black label this, and then
Cobb could Cobb could theoretically do something like that, but again, people just look at their access port.
people, yeah. Well, the problem with an access port is you can display 6 things.
Yeah.
Okay. What if it's something that you can't display? Fuel pressure isn't something that most people have up all the time. But when it goes bad, you want to know. Or if it's somebody like me, very track oriented.
Oh.
Honestly, I only want one thing. I'm looking at, let's say it's really hot out and I'm really worried about oil temp. Okay. Everything else I really don't give a shit about, but I want to really seriously monitor oil temp for whatever reason. But if something else does go wrong, it takes over and yells at me. Like, to me, because when I'm, hauling ass down a straightaway, I don't have time to look at 4 different parameters, but I got time
Yeah.
to stare at one.
You know what, Dewey?
Yeah.
The Cobb could do all this. Cobb could replicate all this behavior in their access port and put it in there.
But do they?
They don't. So I don't know. I always think the access port could do so much more, and they are slowly putting some effort into it. For example, they've come out with, for some ECUs, they've come out with automatic logging. So you can set up parameters to basically, like, anytime you hammer on it, it makes a log.
That's a great idea.
I've been saying for years we need something like that.
The amount
Literally
of data we
years.
can get from that.
What's that?
The amount of data. How much would you learn from that? Like, some dude's like, yeah, dude, I just got on the car and it did this. And, now I'm rod knocking.
Yeah.
Send me that log.
it could be helpful. Probably not for rod knock, but like maybe if it leans out and melts a piston, we could maybe see like, hey, bro, your fuel pressure was in the toilet, like.
I mean, if I got on it, it would start logging. You would have the log in
Yes.
theory. In theory. So then, I mean, it might not tell you everything you need to know, but like, let's say it went really lean for a second. Okay, well, hey, something with your fueling shit the bed. That's what happened.
Yep.
Like,
It can be super helpful. Like the other day, for example, one of our Link ECU customers, showed up at Six Star and his car had done something funny a week prior, right?
yeah,
And so I remoted in, I went back, I grabbed data log, I opened it up, and within 2 minutes, I'm like, hey, were you low on fuel in your tank? He goes, yeah, I was like at eighth tank. I did a pull. I'm like, that's what happened. I could see it immediately in the log that his fuel pressure dropped because of the acceleration and fuel slosh.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
so that's the kind of the same thing. That's what's one of the benefits of standalone that now the cob access port can do. But the cob access port has all these parameters. It has all this data.
Yeah,
Theoretically, they could write some firmware to build in some warnings that flash at you. They could do some math on the access port.
I'm
They could do
hollering at
whatever.
you. I think the community's hollering at you. I think we need this.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get there. Honestly, like compared to a lot of the other types of ways to tune cars, like for example, Ecutech with the using your phone as your tuning device and your monitor, like
Yes.
that is huge. That is a super cool
Well, I
thing.
think that's giant, and plus it gives your phone almost always has an insane amount of spape. It
Yep.
could hold logs for months.
Well, and it's also on the internet, so you can upload them directly to your tuner immediately.
I don't know. I think access port version 3 should literally just be like a dongle that goes kind of like an Ecutech that
Well,
just
that's
goes.
kind of that's the thing I'm really curious is how long is Cobb going to ride the V3 and how much improvement will they make to it in the meantime? And
Yeah.
and when they and if and when it reaches end of life, what will be next? Will they just move to a phone-based system like Ecutech uses, or will they
We all
come out with
run around
some
with
really, really nice
freakishly
handheld,
powerful.
that's powerful? I don't know.
We run around with this freakishly powerful device in our pockets. Everybody has one.
Yeah.
You cannot function without having this thing in your pocket anymore. We need to use it.
I think that could be the way they go, but it also could be nice to have a dedicated device that's you don't have to, take out of your pocket and
Sell
connect,
it separate. Sell it separate. That's my 2 cents. If you
Well,
think you
yeah.
need, and they could build it off a little mini tablet.
But like the access port V4, if it does exist, it needs to be on the internet. It needs to, be more powerful. It needs to be able to automatically Bluetooth the logs over to your phone, to your app that go to your tuner. Like they'll have to make a connected, I think the V4, if it is a standalone device, would have to be connected in the
Oh,
cloud and have some of that
I was about to
functionality.
say, what if there was some like cloud situation with this where it's connected to your phone and it uploads it uploads to the cloud so your tuner can look into things like that. You know what I mean? And it's like, so you would be able to, if it was your customer with your tune and you would go into like a Cobb portal, and be able to find your customer. And, if your customer said, hey, something's funky here, it would just be on the cloud.
Well, that's exactly how it works with Ecutech. That's how I do it with
Oh
HP
my God.
tuners.
Really? Does it
So
really work that way with Ecutech?
yeah, everything's in the cloud.
It's
Yeah.
so good. Oh my God.
Yeah. I remote tuned a GR86 for a shop in Texas this morning, and yep, they just did it all with the phone. Literally, just synced up with me. I sent them a file. They'd run it. The dyno operator would email me the dyno graphs, and the shop, the person that runs the shop that was taking the car over there, they would just upload it, and I would download the logs and look at them and send updates, and it was super simple.
That'd be, come on, guys. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
with that stated, I think the V3 is long in the tooth, man. That thing's been around a minute. All right. When did that come out? Like 13?
yeah.
Okay. It's been a minute. Okay. So they've had a lot on their plate since then.
That's
Um,
that's very true. Exactly. Like making a new access port cannot
yeah.
be a priority right now. They have to,
No.
they had to deal with the stuff and the things and, coming back from that. And they've done a great job. And I'm not. I'd much rather have new platforms supported quickly than have a new access port. So I'm not by any means begging for a new access port, but
You
when the
also have
time's right.
to understand, if they move to a new access port, there's a very good chance a lot of the older stuff does get left behind. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't do anything with a GD chassis. You know what I mean? I couldn't blame them.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
But we're getting there. It's about time. You know what I'm saying? And we're starting to get to that point where a lot has changed since 2013, especially when it comes to like being able to utilize the cloud. Cloud computing has changed everything, and being able, everybody having high speed internet in their pocket is completely different than it even was in 2013.
Yep. Yeah.
So I don't know. Soon. That's all we can soon. um Downside with your phone is you got to pull the gauges up every. No. So Adam, that's why I really like that can gauge, because it's always there, and it's only one gauge. It's one gauge to rule them off all. So you only need a gauge, which is cool. Yeah, I gotta be real. I kind of want to get one of those new links for my BRZ specifically to run one of those gauges, just so I've got it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But is what it is. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else got floating around? Anything new with you, bud? What are you up to?
The who what?
What are you up to these days? How's GR Corolla stuff going?
Well, I mean, so the tuning is insane. We're super busy with the tuning, and
Yeah.
it's going great. Everyone's chomping at the bit for flex fuel right now. So hopefully Ecutech has told me they're going to be shifting development back over to that here very soon. So, but no, it's moving right along on those, doing a ton of work with those cars. So that's been fun.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm tinkering with the Raptor now. I'm kind of got back around to tuning the Raptor. I got interested in trying to fix some TCM shifting weirdness when you put it into sport mode, and so I started kind of poking back through that today and built an update to the tune before driving the truck home, and it's like, holy shit, this is night and day better. So now I'm kind of interested in putting that thing on the dyno and playing with it some more, because I'm doing that Raptor run in the UP in January. So I'm trying to get it all ready for that.
Going with you. I might go along. I just don't know if I want to go along and ride passenger that whole time. But I don't.
I mean, I might let you drive here and there.
Man. I don't know. I don't know if I want to drive it. That's just it. So like, that's the other thing. If I go up there, am I going to be pissed I'm not driving? And if I do drive, like, is it really? I don't know. I got a lot going on. What's going on with your Subaru?
Just want to throw it out to you. But yeah, no, I'm just getting that thing tuned up, ready to go. I had to get some lights and a radio and shit for it to do that. So the focus is on the Raptor at the moment. The Corolla's been parked, waiting to get a Motec for it, and then I'll tinker with it.
Subaru. Talk about your frickin' Subaru. What's
Okay,
going on?
so yeah, so the Subaru, my Subaru is currently running, driving, and I have everything I need for the new engine to go in. So I've got that really badass IAG 2-liter back when we were still doing 2-liter things. And as much as I want to be on the 235 game or 234, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to use this 2-liter because it's built to the moon. It should rev really well. It's got Dom's magic cams in it. I really wanted to try. Yep. It's got some badass stage 5 CNC 2-liter heads on it.
If they ever shit, it's okay. We'll just open the combustion chambers up and stick it to
We'll figure it out, right? So so the engine's sitting there ready to go now. I've got the E-gate on there now. I've been playing around with tuning the E-gate, which has been kind of fun.
How is that working out?
It's working out great. So it's working over CAN bus, and Derek, from
the black box thing from TurboSmart.
So yeah, so I'm basically exactly. So the easy way to do it is using the black box. So the black box controls the gate, and then Emtron talks to the black box, and the black box talks back to Emtron. So I don't have to deal with controlling it elegantly. The black box does all of the smart control.
Oh, that's
Emtron
cool.
just feeds it a target area, and then it responds back to where it's at, and then that lets all the PID control. So basically, you tune it like you use all your normal boost control tables, but essentially your boost control, your wastegate duty cycle that you come up with translates to an area to open, or to close the gate down to, or open it up to, depending how you're looking at it.
Yeah.
So that all kind of works the same. You got to kind of rethink your PIDs. And then the other thing you have to think about too is with a pneumatic gate, there's always a spring holding it closed.
Yes.
With an electronic gate, there's nothing holding it closed. So you have to ask it to be closed most of the time. Essentially, you basically give it with a pneumatic boost control system. You basically just you rest the boost controller. In other words, you don't give any control to the boost controller until it's time to make some boost, and then you give it some duty.
Yeah.
It's kind of the inverse with the electronic boost controller. You give it 100% duty all the time, just cruising around so that your gate is mostly closed. And then you have to kind of start to crack it open depending on your RPM and your desired boost pressure and things like that. So it's been interesting to tune it. It's actually similar to tuning a VBWX. A VBWX has an electronic wastegate arm on it. So the initial mapping of that and the way you shape your boost control starting point for those cars isn't all that much different with how I'm having to do it now on my car. But
so
what's super cool about it is I can run at 5 psi of boost, or I can run it, whatever the max on that turbo is. So I have an infinite boost range. So that means when I'm not kind of limited by my gate pressure, I can run much less boost pressure and kind of roll it on with, I'm going to use the Emtron torque based stuff eventually. It'll make that so much easier.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of excited about. I don't know how much you've actually got to mess around with it, but have you noticed any issues with it maybe responding a little slower than we would hope for?
So that's okay. So that's the big thing. Now I can't tell you that right now because I'm still driving. I'm driving it around with EJ20X in there. I don't want to scatter that thing and have to buy a new oil pump. So I'm not doing anything crazy with it right now until the built motor goes in.
That's fair.
But yeah. So Josh is asking, should I sell my pneumatic gate right now? No, don't do anything yet. Once I turn this thing up to full song, then I really want to test how it responds between shifts. But the thing is, like when I've worked with one in the past, I worked with electronic wastegate in the past. I've only got to do it once, and it was on Puglisi's Evo. And both, he does some tuning on that car. I helped with some tuning on that car. So I'm not going to take full credit for all the tuning, but we kind of worked together and we played around with it. And going into that, neither one of us really had any idea. We'd never done E-gates before. And we got in the dyno, we played with it. We were using his Haltech ECU, and we got it to work. We got to make boost. But at the time, neither one of us, I don't think, really thought about an E-gate control and E-gate PID, meaning like, where do you rest the wastegate between shifts and how do you move it? And we never really thought about that. And so I thought about it a lot after he told me that on track it was kind of lazy and responding funny. I thought, well, you really, I think that I have to rethink how this works. And the important thing is, as soon as you come off the throttle, even if you want to use maybe like turbo shaft speed or EMAP, I'm probably going to use some other variables in my PID control strategy to basically close the gate, make sure that you effectively close the gate when you're coming off the pedal so that your response and your spool up coming back on is sharp and quick. But then you're also going to have to make sure that you open it back up to the right point to catch the boost pressure where you want. So in other words, I think it can work well with proper tuning and proper PID control, but I'm not sure yet. I sent you that video. I showed you like how quickly it can go from full open to full closed, and it's pretty damn quick.
That's fast.
It's only slightly slower than how quickly it can open the throttle all the way.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fast. It moves fast. And if you're already keeping it at, a near closed position and then cracking it open to, the needed area to hold your boost pressure, I think it's going to be pretty fast. I think it can work fine with good tuning, but I've got to test it. So
yeah, and we're talking drastically new concepts for some of the stuff that we've already done. Then for me, I'm actually more excited at what we're going to be doing on the pressure side, not the exhaust side.
Yeah, so I've got so I have the Turbo Smart. I have that electronic wastegate or electronic bypass valve on there now too.
Yeah.
And so that is something I'm going to start tinkering with as well. once the boost is all dialed in. I want to play with that to kind of do like some, some bleed style stuff. So instead of having to, when you lift the throttle, I don't want to have to, you know, basically, you can,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, you can crack that, keep your turbo speed up, and then you should have some good response too. So yeah, we'll play with that. Josh did ask, how am I cooling the gate? So I'm simply, just going to run a coolant line down to it. I'm probably going to essentially use the circuit that normally goes through the stock throttle body. You know how the throttle body has a coolant circuit running through it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna use that same circuit and run that down to my E gate.
That makes
That's
sense.
yeah, pretty simple. Just some pretty small line. Doesn't need to have a ton, but it does need something. So
I don't that was something I thought about, and the other thing I was thinking is is that going to introduce, a bunch more heat than I was expecting? I don't see how it would. I don't see that being
no,
a problem whatsoever, especially like if you have a track car, you should have enough cooling overhead to play with that anyway.
yeah, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, I'm really really stoked to mess with that. I think packaging for the GC is going to be a little harder than packaging for you. You
Yeah.
have a little more room
The other
than
thing too is that Roger Clark Motorsport turbo kit I have. You've seen it where it puts the wastegate down pretty low.
yeah.
It's actually almost kind of like in the tunnel, so it should actually see a fair amount of good airflow where it's at. It's not
Oh, that's a
it's
good
not
point.
tucked up by the firewall, or it's not sitting by the turbo housing.
Do you
It's in a
think
great
that would
spot
be an
for some
issue?
natural air cooling.
Do you think that would be an issue if we were to move the gate way down there? Do you think it would affect the efficiency of the gate or, power in general if like we move the gate like way down the downpipe? You know what I mean? So we were to run it off of, because you're running a fairly long
Yeah.
split to go to it. So your
No,
gate itself is
I don't
50
think it's gonna
down
I
there,
don't think
right?
it's gonna matter. As long as it's got a good exhaust flow path, and you're respecting the direction of exhaust flow and, airflow dynamics.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem having it farther away like that. And in fact, it's going to help it be a fair amount cooler by the time the exhaust gets to it.
I agree with that, but I wonder if like there's going to be something to like boost control might be a little funny because it is so far away. Is it going to be able to bleed that pressure?
I don't
What
think it's
do you
going to
think
be a
about
problem
if you were
because it
to open
at
the gate up? The pressure it's almost it should almost immediately relieve back at the split.
yeah, it will essentially. It's going to reduce the back pressure pretty quickly. And
Yeah,
that's the pressure is what drives the turbine. So
exactly.
you're going to reduce the pressure pretty quickly, and you're going to see your turbine speed react to that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that works because what we would end up doing then is instead of trying to stick the gate right near the up pipe, you know what I mean? We would probably move it very similar to what you're doing. We would run a you know, uh like almost like a dump pipe, but not like a dump pipe, but try to get it out further down the down pipe.
Yep.
I don't know if we would recirculate or not, but at that point we might as well.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, no. To back to the original question, I'm pretty much at a point now where I even tested. I got the dual injector setup in there. I tested both sets of injectors. I've got all the TMF set up. The pre throttle body sensor all set up. So I want to do like basically an entire systems check on the ECU. I showed you I got all the Motec dash integration stuff working correctly now.
You got some cool stuff going on
All the
that.
PMU. Yeah. So basically the car is 100% done for wiring, dash, all that. I did also. I've been figuring out where I'm going to put that radium coolant expansion tank.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use the radium universal coolant expansion tank and basically give this thing a proper coolant expansion tank versus having to use the turbo coolant reservoir and then having to basically puke into the the overflow reservoir and then suck it back in and use two radiator caps. That whole system just annoys me. So I'm going to move it to a system with a regular, coolant
We'll see
overflow
how that
system.
works out. I'm interested to see if that works for you or not.
Yeah.
Personally, I think you're overcomplicating it, but
No, yeah,
maybe
I mean, I think it's going to be simpler. You need to
maybe
have something.
I'm wrong.
You need to use something. Coolant has to expand, right? Do you want to puke it into something where it has to draw back in when it cools down? I don't think so. That doesn't make any sense to me. It makes more sense to let the coolant level fill up into an actual reservoir and you have a constant air gap in there, unless you're pushing coolant. If you're pushing coolant, then you're screwed either way. But
Yeah.
then it's gonna come out the pressure cap. And
I wonder
obviously,
if you could put a sensor in that.
well,
That
you
could
don't really. Well, no, I mean, you think it's funny. I made the joke about taking, like, basically on that coolant reservoir there. There's a pressure cap. I'm going to use the highest bar cap I can get on there, and
Yeah.
then I was going to actually connect the vacuum line from my um hood sprayers. So
Okay.
I'm running water anyway, right? So I joked about that, like hooking up your overflow port to your windshield washer fluid nozzles, and so you get a visual indicator if you're pushing coolant.
Yeah, it just shits onto your windshield that way.
Yep, you could just spray your windshield with your water. Now, if you're running coolant, probably not a good idea. But anyway, but I'll have a coolant pressure sensor, so I'm not worried about that. I will realistically probably plumb that into like a small catch or something. I've got to put a monster can somewhere. But essentially, I much prefer the idea of having your coolant level rise into an actual reservoir, like almost every other type of car uses.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it has to expand and then it has to contract. And when you're racing on the track, a lot of times your coolant expands a lot more, and then it may not have enough time to cool down and pull back in.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think the Subaru system is itself kind of, it's got some challenges when you're taking it on track. And I think honestly, this coolant reservoir is going to fix that.
100% designed in 1990. You know what I mean?
That's the problem. And again, you look at any other modern vehicle, and pretty much, I don't think, is there any other car that you can think of, any other turbo car that you can think of that uses 2 radiator caps?
No.
Have you ever seen that? No, exactly. Have you ever seen something that's got, that has to, how many cars can you think of that have, let's just say, like, an unsealed, uncontained area where coolant hangs out that pukes out of a rubber hose?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. They don't do that. They don't do this anymore.
It's just barfing in there.
It's silly. It's silly. So I think it's modernizing it to give it a coolant reservoir that, you fill it to a low mark and then you check it at a high mark, and that is your level and you're good, and you've got a constant air gap in there. And only if you're completely pushing coolant would you ever completely fill that reservoir and end up puking out your pressure cap.
Yeah, which again, that would be so if you see anything in your catch can, something's wrong.
Exactly. So anyway, I've got a great spot to mount it. It's gonna go on the passenger strut tower. It'll be at the highest point in the system. It'll also be very clean. It'll basically, instead of coming off the turbo, will go into that system, and then the line that gets drawn back into the water pump will connect to the bottom of it. And it has kind of a swirl section, and then it has like an overflow section all kind of built into one. And the overflow section will simply connect back to that point on the radiator.
Yeah.
And voila, you got a complete system.
Yeah, that should function.
So I think it'll work well.
Yep. Well,
so
it's good to know.
Yeah, so I got to do that. I got to plumb in my breather catch can I'm changing to, but that's it. I'm going to actually start getting ready to pull the engine and potentially pull the engine next week and put the IAG in there. And we're there finally.
That thing next year again, then. Yeah.
The plan. Yeah. I mean, the plan is to do some testing over the winter, and lots of dyno time, some driving while I still can, to put some miles on it. And then ideally, might make some appearances with it next year.
That would be sick. And even if it's only a test bed, that would be good to see out there again. The car that literally started the arms race in Street Mod.
Yeah.
People seem to not quite understand where Street Modified and Grid Life went off the rails, and it was 100% Graham. Graham started it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's gotten, it's basically like battle against the Supras out there at this point.
Yeah, you kicked the snowball. The snowball has rolled quite a ways.
But yeah, I'll come out there and see if I can, still get maybe 5th or 6th place. Would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you can even sniff what look like, if you have all your old times, we can look at all of those, and if you're making improvements and whatever we learned from your car, that's what this has always been. I took whatever we learned from your car and shoved it into Boogie,
Yeah.
and we're just gonna do that again. And
No, I can't I can't mentally afford those plastic trophies anymore.
yeah, it's
And I don't want to physically afford them either. I don't want to spend my money on those. So,
I would like to do one lap of America in your car.
that's exactly what I want to do with the car. People are like, "Are you going to gut it? Are you going to fully cage it?" I'm like, "No, actually I'm not." So the vision for my car is and has always been my version of a GT3 street car. Okay, so like think about a Porsche GT3 that comes with a cage in the back. It's still street legal. It's safe. It has an interior. It has creature comforts, but it has some track safety elements added to it, and it can go on the track and it can be a weapon, or it can drive around America to various tracks like one lap. I've
Yep.
always built my car in that sense where it is still maintains as much streetability as it can while still being very fast on the track. And one lap is exactly what I'd love to do with that car. It's a bucket list thing, and it's kind of what it's built to be able to do, I guess.
Yeah. No.
So
Let's party. I think that'd be a riot. I'd be more than happy to co-drive with you on that one. That'd be a riot. All right. I think we did a thing, my guy.
we did a thing.
I think we
Yeah.
answered a question. We had some good times. If anybody's got any other questions, answer right now. Throw something in there right now. But other than that, yeah, that's about it. Adam,
Somebody was asking about Link G4 versus G5.
yeah, what do you know about that?
Well, so the G5 is it's an extension of the G4X.
Okay.
Let me look at it quick here.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't gotten to spend a ton of time on it. The new ECU that we got for Jeremy is based on the G5.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that new plug-in ECU for Toyota
Yeah.
86, it's a G5 based ECU.
Oh, that's cool.
So what does it have?
I'm very excited to see that clean up a bunch of his issues. I have a feeling he's actually going to gain a little bit of
So it's
power.
got built-in Wi-Fi, built-in GPS.
That's
I don't know how it compares for how it drives things, but I think it's a more powerful feature-added G4X, essentially. And the
Yeah.
reason why I say that is because the new G5 software is backwards compatible to the G4X.
So it's got to be close.
That tells me the firmware is pretty close. That tells me the rest of the hardware is probably pretty close. So don't quote me on all that. I'm sure I wish Mike McGinnis was in here because he could probably give us all the full facts on it because he looks at this stuff more than I do. But that's my very high level understanding. So, but yeah, the existing plug-in ECUs are still G4X based. Now, if anybody brings up G4 Plus, G4 Plus is the old hardware iteration, and it's basically obsolete. You can't buy it, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah.
You can't buy it anymore. But sometimes cars show up with it for tuning, and I get mad because it's got a lot of things that are much. G4X has things that are significantly improved in the firmware that the G4 Plus didn't have, so it's always kind of frustrating to tune those cars.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, G5 is an extension of G4X with more features and more power, and yeah,
That's cool. So, well, there you go. I think we did a thing.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're gonna call it that. But dude, again, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you were busy as shit to come hang out and chat ECUs and cars and random shenanigans.
No, happy to
Uh,
be part of it.
yeah, it's always good to have you on. Hopefully we can make a trip out to Tail of the Dragon together, and I don't know, maybe I'll join you for doing silly raptor shit. Maybe I won't. Well, we'll see.
I'll keep you posted.
As usual, if anybody's trying to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh, probably our email. They can message me on my my Facebook page that I've got,
Yeah.
or email's good. If it's a quick question, message me. We can chat. If it's like, hey, how do I get my XYZ to XYZ horsepower or whatever, then
I'm
send
gonna
us an
do you a
email.
favor, because every time he does this, the best way to get a hold of Graham is boostedperformancetuning.com. Okay. Now, you may get a hold of Graham, you may get a hold of Kim. It's the same thing. You're going to get the same answers. Kim's
Yep.
fantastic also. So, boostedperformancetuning.com, everything you guys need is there. I would recommend using their email like they just said though. They will get back with you during crazy time periods. It might take them a couple days. It's okay. Don't freak out. They will get back with you. So,
Yep. And also for anybody who's considering standalones, both Link and Emtron are having their Black Friday sales. Link has been live for a couple days. We've sold a bunch of those to people, and Emtron is live as of today. So
I will
if you're
forward those
wanting,
guys to you. Unfortunately, we don't sell that, which I wish we did, but we don't yet. So I will, hit if you guys are looking for some hot standalone action, hit up Graham. He's even willing to sell it to you, even if somebody else is tuning it. I guarantee it, but he may have a conversation with you.
yep.
Go get yourself an Emtron. It's great. I love it. Yeah, like I said, it's been fun. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. And I guess we'll see you guys next time.